Shalom Mishpachim, welcome to His Narrow Bridge. Our time together today is meant to immerse ourselves in the Word of Yahweh. It is meant to be a personal time of connection to the Word for each of us. I will read each word as translated in English in an interlinear Hebrew Bible. These shows are pre-recorded, so I will be in chat when they air. Feel free to use the chat to post anything that comes to your mind as we read the word. We will begin with prayer, followed by time for each of us to say our own personal prayers. Our beloved friend Alan Horvath taught us, make Elohim number one on a list of one. We pray in the name of Elohim, which includes Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Ruach HaKodesh. Thank you, Elohim, for our lives and all you provide. We ask for a hedge of protection around our mishpacha as we pray and study. We love you dearly. We are your children. We come to you with questions as we seek our personal relationships with you. Please help us learn. If any darkness enters our time together, we ask you now to rebuke it. We will now listen to your word as we immerse ourselves in it and let it speak to us.
Luke chapter 12. And when a multitude of many crowds gathered so that they trampled one another, Yeshua began to say to his disciples, "First of all, be wary inside yourselves of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And there is not anything that is covered that will not be revealed, or that is hidden that will not be known. For everything you say in darkness will be heard in light, and the thing you whisper into ears in closets will be proclaimed upon the roof. But I say to you, my friends, do not have fear of those who kill the body, and after that they have nothing more to do. But I will show you whom to be afraid of. He whom, after he has killed, has authority to throw into Gehenna. Yes, I say to you, have fear of him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 coins, and yet not one of them is lost before Elohim? But even the individual hairs of your head are numbered. Therefore do not have fear, because you are more valuable than a multitude of sparrows. And I say to you that whoever confesses me before men, the Son of Man also will confess before the messengers of Elohim. But whoever denies me before men will himself be denied before the messengers of Elohim. And anyone who says a word against the Son of Man, it will be forgiven him. But he who blasphemes against the Ruach HaKodesh will not be forgiven him. And when they bring you into the assemblies before chiefs and authorities, do not be anxious about how your breath should depart or what you should say. For the Ruach HaKodesh will teach you at that moment what is worthy that you should say." A man from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Yeshua said to him, "Man who has appointed me as judge and divider over the 2 of you?" And he said to his disciples, "Watch out against all greed, because life is not in the abundance of wealth." And he spoke a parable to them. A certain rich man, his land brought many crops to him. And he was reasoning in himself and saying, "What will I do, because I have no place in where I can gather my crops?" And he said, "I will do this. I will tear down my barns and rebuild and enlarge them and gather in there all my wheat and goods. And I will say to myself, My soul, you have many goods that are laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But Elohim said to him, Fool, your soul will be required from you in this night, and these things that you have prepared, who will they be for? Such is he who lays up treasures for himself and does not abound in Elohim. And he said to his disciples, Because of this I say to you, do not be anxious about yourselves, what you will eat, nor about your bodies, what you will wear. For the soul is greater than food, and the body than clothing. Consider the ravens that do not sow, nor do they reap, and they have no storerooms or barns, yet Elohim provides for them. Therefore, how much more important are you than the birds are? And which of you, while you are worrying, is able to add 1 cubit to his stature? And if not, even the smaller thing you are able to do, why concerning the rest are you worrying? Verse 27, consider the lilies, how they grow, for they do not labor, nor do they spin. But I say to you that not even Shlimon in all his glory was covered like one of these. And if the grass that is in the field today and tomorrow falls into the furnace, Elohim thus clothes, how much more you of little faith? And you do not seek what you will eat and what you will drink, nor let your mind be disturbed by these things. For these things all the nations of the world seek also, and your Father knows that these things are necessary for you. Nevertheless, seek the kingdom of Elohim, and these things will all be added to you. Little flock, do not fear, because your Father desires to give the kingdom to you. Sell your possessions and give alms for righteousness' sake. Footnote 76. The word here, tzedakah, has a majority meaning of righteousness. However, in much the same fashion as Orthodox rabbis today, Yeshua uses this word to indicate charitable giving to the poor. In his day, as now, the phrase in Hebrew, Aramaic, habo tzedakah, does not mean give righteousness, but rather spread righteousness through charity. Synagogues all over the world continuously encourage Jews on Shabbat and special Moedim to do and give tzedakah, a phrase which is perfectly preserved by Yeshua. Therefore, even though technically speaking for righteousness' sake is not mentioned, the double meaning of the word is implied. Furthermore, Yeshua clearly teaches that not all giving accrues as an act of righteousness if the giver does so with pomp and ego. See Matthew 6, 2 and 3, Luke 11, 39 through 44. So continuing with verse 33, make for yourselves purses which do not wear out, and a treasure in heaven that does not fail, where the thief does not approach and the moth does not corrupt. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let your loins be girded up and your lamps lit, and be likened to men who expect their master at the time he returns from the wedding feast, so that when he comes and knocks, they may immediately open the door to him. Blessed are those servants who, when their master comes and finds them while they are awake, truly I say to you, he that will gird up his loins and cause them to recline, and will go around serving them. And if in the second or third watch he comes and finds them thus, those servants are blessed. Baruch. But realize this, that if the master of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not allow his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, because at the moment that you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. Shimon Kephas said to him, Our master, do you speak this parable to us or also to everyone? Yeshua said to him, Who indeed is the faithful and wise steward whom his master will appoint over his service, that he should give a portion in due time? Baruch is the servant who, when his master comes, will find that he does thus. Truly I say to you that he will appoint him over all his wealth. But if that servant should say in his heart that my master delays to come, and begins to beat the servants and maidservants of his master, and begins to eat and to drink and to be intoxicated, master of that servant will come in a day that he does not expect, and in an hour that he does not know, and he will divide him and place his portion with those who are not faithful. And that servant who knows the will of his master and does not prepare for him according to his will be beaten with many stripes. But he who does not know and does the thing that is worthy of stripes will be beaten with fewer stripes. For anyone who is given much to him, much is required from him. And to he whom they have committed much to him, much more they will require by his hand. I have come to cast fire on earth, and I desire it had been kindled, if not already. And I have an immersion to be immersed with. Am I great? And I am greatly afflicted until it is fulfilled. Do you think that I have come to place tranquility on earth? I say to you, no, rather division. From now on, for there will be 5 in a certain house that will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. Footnote 78, possibly an autobiographical comment. According to Mark, Yeshua had at least 4 brothers and 2 sisters. 2 of them became shlichim, apostles, Yaakov and Yehuda, and the other 2, Yosef Jr. and Shimon, were at one time plotting to have Yeshua locked up, Mark 3:21, or tried to put him into a potentially dangerous situation, John 7:1-5. Furthermore, the youngest unmarried sisters would have been given no say in the validity of their brother Yeshua's teaching. However, Torah requires that Yeshua and his siblings also honor their mother, and apparently the father was deceased. As for Maryam, she clearly supports her son, along with Yaakov and Yehuda, which tallies 2 against 3 and 3 against 2. Verse 53, for a father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. See Micah 7, verse 6. For son dishonors father, daughter rises against her mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Enemies are of a man, the men of his own household. Verse 54, and he said to the crowds, when you see a cloud that rises from the west, immediately you say, rain is coming, and it happens thus. And when the south wind blows, you say, there will be heat, and it happens. Hypocrites, you know to distinguish the appearance of the earth and of the heavens, but you do not know how to distinguish this time. And of yourselves, why do you not judge right? For when you go with your accuser to the ruler while on your way, you barter with him and settle with him, or else he take you to the judge, and the judge will deliver you to the warden and cast you into prison. And I say to you that you will not depart from there until you pay the last coin.
Shalom, Mishpachim. Today I'd like to read from a pamphlet called Boundaries. Whether we are aware of them or not, we all have boundaries. This pamphlet explores what boundaries are and how they support us in developing healthy and loving relationships with ourselves and others. Defining boundaries. Boundaries are limits. Boundaries separate one person, place, or thing from another. Boundaries are verbal or physical divisions that separate our identities, responsibilities, feelings, needs, and issues from other people's. Throughout the recovery process, we constantly rediscover that our first responsibility is always to ourselves. Boundaries help us to clarify where our responsibilities end and where other people's begin. By establishing healthy boundaries, we slowly learn to take care of our issues and recognize that others have the same privilege. Boundaries fall in several categories that include different aspects of our lives, such as spiritual, social, sexual, physical, emotional, and intellectual. A good example of a healthy boundary is a no crosstalk rule. This essential boundary helps us to focus on ourselves at meetings instead of trying to fix others. Learning to establish and maintain healthy boundaries is one of our greatest recovery tools. Establishing internal boundaries. After we develop an intellectual and emotional understanding of what boundaries are and why we need them, we often discover that a good starting place is getting in touch with ourselves. As part of this process, we find that we want to establish new boundaries with our inner selves. These boundaries are subtle and may include abandoning our feelings, losing touch with ourselves, wanting to be intimate for someone else and not ourselves, and thinking obsessively. As one member shared, I used to get insomnia because I couldn't shut down my worrier. Now I listen closely to that part of me and let it have its say, but I also draw a boundary with it. I'll tell myself, okay, you can have 15 more minutes, but then I need some sleep. This has worked well for me. By establishing healthy internal boundaries, we gradually relieve ourselves of our compulsions. We are then able to work on feeling our feelings and move forward with our recovery. Establishing healthier internal boundaries allows us to get in touch with aspects of ourselves that we've kept hidden for most of our lives. As we develop a heightened awareness of our inner world, we learn to listen to ourselves and trust our intuitions and feelings. Establishing external boundaries. Apart from establishing healthier internal boundaries, we may also discover that we want to establish new boundaries in our existing relationships. These relationships may be with spouses, children, parents, siblings, in-laws, friends, colleagues, even passing strangers. In examining our boundaries, we can ask ourselves, am I trying to control this person? Asking ourselves this question helps us to create a healthier middle ground between the extremes of either controlling others or allowing others to control us. We need to set healthier boundaries to avoid abandoning ourselves, caretaking, fixing, or otherwise trying to control other people. We must set boundaries with others who attempt to control us by telling us how to think, feel, or behave. Setting boundaries supports us in our program of learning to care for the self. As one member shared, I spend a lot of time on the phone. I have found that setting a time limit for my calls helps me stick to my daily schedule. Without this boundary, I would feel angry about the amount of time that I spend on the phone and my schedule would feel unmanageable. Assessing boundaries. Determining the appropriateness of our current boundaries is a vital step in the recovery process. Good questions to ask ourselves include, am I angry? Do I feel used? Do I feel violated? Do I feel resentful? Do I feel isolated? Do I feel frightened? Do I feel like a child? Are my boundaries or lack of them allowing me to maintain healthy relationships with others and myself? If our boundaries are too rigid, we might be unable to form intimate relationships with others. In redefining boundaries that have grown too rigid, we may discover that we need to examine core issues such as trust and vulnerability. While these rigid boundaries may have protected us in the past, today they may be preventing us from achieving fulfilling levels of intimacy. We can learn to relax overly rigid boundaries when we truly feel that we can trust ourselves to practice self-care. In assessing our current boundaries, we may also discover that our boundaries are not firm enough or are non-existent. Again, we can trust our feelings to guide us when we feel taken advantage of, or when our lives may become unmanageable. We learn to recognize and trust these feelings and then set healthier boundaries, if necessary. If we are unsure about our feelings, we can call our sponsor or others in recovery. We can take a minute to ask ourselves, what do I need right now? If our boundaries have been inappropriate, we can redefine them. We do not need to feel guilty or afraid, but if we do, we are still entitled to set a new boundary. Recovery teaches us that we are capable of change. Setting a boundary or changing an existing boundary to make it more effective is healthy and sometimes necessary. Establishing boundaries. For many of us, setting boundaries can be a new and sometimes frightening experience. However, developing healthy boundaries is crucial to our recovery. When we are ready to set a boundary, we may want to consider the following. 1. Determine the need for creating a boundary or changing an existing boundary. We do this by listening to our feelings. For example, if we feel angry, used, or guilty, we probably need to set a boundary. 2. Sometimes we may need to state our boundary out loud to the person we are establishing it with, even if it's with ourselves. 3. Listen to objections as long as they are stated in a respectful manner. 4. Despite objections, restate our boundary and stick to it. If we decide to reconsider our boundary in the face of a conflict, it's helpful to do so on our own time, away from any outside influence. The following list provides examples of some typical challenges that recovering codependents may encounter when establishing boundaries. Mom comes to visit without calling. Is this okay with me? If not, what boundary can I set? Do I ask her to call me an hour before visiting? A day? A friend asks for a loan. Do I feel comfortable with this? Do I expect to be paid back? How might I feel if I'm not repaid? Am I being kind or caretaking? I'm single or divorced and dating. Do I have sex on the first date? Do I stick to my boundary? Do I tell dates of this boundary? Do I have sex because I feel pressured into intimacy? My partner or spouse is late for dinner. Do I go ahead and eat when I want to? Do I wait until I'm hungry and resentful? My partner or spouse spends a lot of money on something. Do we have an agreement on how much money we spend? Do we keep and spend our own money? Share it? One member always leads a meeting. Is this healthy? Do I offer to lead the meeting? Do I ask for a business meeting to discuss rotating service positions? My meeting usually starts late. Is this respectful of our time boundaries? What prevents us from starting promptly? Have I raised this issue at the meeting? I need to leave for an important appointment, but an acquaintance is monologuing and won't stop talking. Do I continue to fidget and hope she or he reads my body language? Do I politely wait until she or he is done while feeling increasingly used? How do I take care of myself? The most important point to remember in establishing boundaries is that we need to listen to and fully consider our own feelings first, not other people's. Before recovery, we may have allowed others to control and possibly even dominate us, or we may have tried to do the same to them. As recovering codependents, we need to continually rediscover boundaries and practice setting them. In the beginning, establishing internal and external boundaries is difficult work. With practice, setting boundaries comes more easily. Learning to set healthy boundaries helps free us from our lifelong patterns of codependency. We can care for ourselves and know peace. Adon Olam Hashem Olach B'Terem Kol Yetzir Nivra V'Yeis Nasa V'Chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kichlor HaKol Levado Yimlach Nora Vehu haya vehu hove vehu yeh betifara vehu echad ve'yein sheni lehamshilo lehachbira beli reishis beli sachlis velo ha'oz ve'hamisra Vehu Eli V'chai Goali V'tzur Chevli B'yeis Tzara Vehu Nisi Umanosli Menos Kosi B'yom Mekra B'ya'ado Afkid Ruchi B'yeis Ishan B'ya'ira information about these videos, look at the video description and click more. You can then have links to my YouTube channel and the YouTube playlist, which has all the Aramaic English New Testament videos, Bible Hub links, and Odiote. So this is useful because you can click a chapter and go word by word through the scriptures and get details about each word and where they are used throughout the Bible.